I'm Bob Baker with Jazz Guitar Today, and we're here with Doug Martin, and he's in Beijing, China, and
That's right.
We're glad as hell to talk to him for sure. Well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about your background, because I don't know that enough people. I usually don't do history lessons here. Usually we just jump right into it. What fascinates me about you, obviously, not only are you a virtuoso player, and you are, and don't blush or anything, but you are. I don't know. Do you consider yourself an expat?
Well, yeah, this is my third time living in China, and this particular time I'm coming up on 10 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been here, back and forth since 2003. So I think it's safe to say I'm an expat at this point.
At this point, you're probably, I mean, you worked your way in. You originally went over there. You were studying martial arts, I believe. I remember.
Yeah, Tai Chi, Qigong, and other things, and as well as Chinese language. I did some of my college studies here, and because I studied, on one hand, I studied music, and then on the other hand, I studied international relations. So this was a good place to do it.
And how to be a martial artist. You got all that going on. Cool. Now, what guitar do you have in your hands?
This guy here, this is an 18-inch AR 910. So
oh my God.
This is a pretty one.
This
is the normal ones. Yeah, I mean the standard ones are 17-inch. So this one they made with the 18-inch.
Okay, template. So let's talk about you and your guitar. Like I said, we usually don't do history lessons around here, and what I mean by that is your past and your history and how you got going and all that. But can you walk us a little bit through your guitar playing, in other words, and how you got started, where you got started?
The short version. So I just turned 45, and so now but I started playing when I was 12, growing up in the Bay Area, and more of a rock and blues environment, and then got into classical music later. My main teacher growing up was a guitar player, producer named Alan Brown. And then when I was in college, I started getting more serious into jazz, and my main guitar teacher then during my 20s was a guitarist named Warren Nunes, who some people have heard of because he wrote several books on jazz guitar. And I also studied with Fred Berry and Gus Gustafson. And moving right along, later on, I got kind of bit by the Django bug and started playing music of the Django Reinhardt tradition, and had collaborations with Lulo Reinhardt, which was really, really special. And we're still friends to this day. And I've been over to Europe several times. He's been out here to China. We played in the US and Australia and many places together. And then after that, I think it was 2010, I started playing with John Jorgensen and his quintet. And we were on the road just about every month. I was with him for over 2 years. Playing in his ensemble, Gypsy Swing Ensemble. And then in 2012, I moved back to Beijing and was playing that music here, as well as the kind of music that got me started with jazz, which was more BeBop based, straight ahead music. So, which is probably more of what I'm playing these days as well. It's just been in the last year or so that during this pandemic, I've had a lot of extra time on my hands, as a lot of us have. So I use this time to take a lot of these compositions and, musical ideas and snippets that I've wanted to do things with over, several years, and just finally getting down and putting it all together now that I have all this time.
So talk about the John Jorgensen connection. How did that come about?
That happened, actually, there was a couple years in 2006 and 2007, I was working with Saga Musical Instruments, who's, they're at that time were based in South San Francisco, and they have a John Jorgensen model guitar. Yeah. They also have a Lulo Reinhardt model guitar, but it's actually through Saga that I met both of those guys, just through the work connection, and ended up connecting with them, clicking personally and musically with those guys. So it led to other things.
I think I actually saw you playing with John at NAMM in Nashville.
Nashville, right? At the
Yeah.
Hermitage.
Yeah, at the Hermitage. Actually, I did. And I can remember sitting in like the second row of that, because it was a really, really cool thing. And here comes this, young blonde guy, with the, and I thought, I said, what, who the is that? What's going on? And then you proceeded just kick the shit out of the whole thing. I mean, you played great that night. I remember, and I walked out going, wow, all right, that's great band. Everybody was great. You were great. John, of course, was great. It was a great show and all that. But I remember distinctly seeing you on that stage, and I'm wondering, how did that guy, because you were kind of unlikely, you know what I mean? It was kind of an unlikely thing.
Yeah, I met John. It was kind of a right time and place kind of thing. But with John's band, my gig was the rhythm chair,
right?
Which I'm perfectly happy to do. I love rhythm guitar. I mean, it's an art in itself. So, I mean, someone says, "Hey, we want to pay you to, go on the road with us, to play rhythm." I'm like,
so play a little bit of play a little bit of rhythm, like what you would have done if you were playing in John's band.
Well, it's like what in that style, like with that gypsy kind of, manouche school they call like Le Pomp. But,
right.
I mean, it's just that 4/4 swing. I mean, most of that music is swing based. So, a lot of that obviously is sometimes slower, sometimes a lot faster. That's a very physical job.
Well,
I'm
that's
going to
what
tell you right now.
I was just going to
say. When John, you can imagine, John and Jason Anik get going. I mean, they're such fabulous soloists too. They get going, and you got to keep those tempos up there.
Well, I was going to say
it's physically demanding because you got to build the endurance.
We have a little bit of a delay, and I don't mean to talk over the top of you. So people that are watching this, please don't think I'm being too rude. But at any rate, oh yeah, okay. But it is physically demanding to do that. I don't think people realize it's like being a bass player, to be upright bass player. Once I used to say, once the wheels are up, like flying an airplane, once the wheels are up, you're committed. You can't stop.
Oh yeah.
It's not like
right.
being a keyboard player or something where you can go, hit a chord and groove for a few beats, and hit another chord and groove for a few beats. I mean, no, you are committed. You just got to keep going, right. and then keeping that time happening. You're like a drummer. You've got to be, in the groove. You got to be right there. And
that's right. No time to rest. You got to hold it,
and you got to do that all night long. And that's
hold the line.
That's a tough thing to do. It's a good thing you were young at the time.
Right, no kidding.
So now you're playing a whole lot of bebop. That's what you're saying?
More bop and hard bop based music, as well as a lot of my own music. I mean, it's really fun to play standards and play, the classics and all that, beautiful body of work. But I mean, it's also something special to be able to play your own music. So that's what I've been doing a lot more of, this last year, and rearranging standards, rearranging, actually traditional music here, and playing originals. So.
Well, actually, when you sent me some stuff. Now, you and I have known each other for about 6 or 7 years, maybe something like that. Maybe.
Yeah, about right.
Yeah, about right. And I always, knew that you were a great player. I mean, I always had that together. But when I listened to some of the stuff that you sent me, which is a new project that's coming out, a new album, if you will, project that's coming out, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
I want, wow, this is, I mean, he's creating something new here, and that's why that's why I said, hey, let's do an in-depth, interview here. So let's talk about that and your approach, and what you feel is the Doug Martin approach that you're bringing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Again, like I said, with COVID, we all had a bit more time on our hands to do things that we've wanted to do. And I wanted to make this new album that, first of all, it was not a jazz guitar album, but just a jazz music album.
Right.
And, you know, I've been in China for so many years. You know, I've had a lot of experiences here that have led me to compose a lot of songs that were influenced by my life in China, as well as, you know, I have a lot of favorite traditional tunes and that I've thought over the years, like, geez, I'd really like to do something with that, and,
Right.
you know, make something different. So, you know, on this album, all the compositions are influenced by my, you know, life mostly here. And, you know, I've seen in the past where, like, you know, people have taken like a traditional Chinese song, or, you know, they basically just kind of thrown traditional Chinese instruments into like a jazz context.
Right.
And it's always, usually when I've seen that, it's felt like it's like forcing two things together that don't necessarily always go together. And I thought, I want to do something different.
If you put oil and water in a blender, you can actually make them look like they're together. And then in about 3 seconds, it all kind of goes back to being oil and water again, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I got it.
So like the first song that I sent you was a traditional Chinese song, but I decided I don't want to use any like traditional Chinese instruments, which, I mean, that's already been done, and it's kind of too easy to do that.
Right.
I want to take some of these beautiful melodies and compositions and really like rearrange them for a contemporary jazz format, but use, you know, the tonality and instrumentation that, you know, that we're used to playing in.
Okay. Is it possible for you to just the guitar? Is it possible for you to play a little bit of a melody that would be considered to be a traditional Chinese melody at all? Or
sure. Well, like part of the one that I sent you was called, you know, I mean, the English translation always sounds kind of funny, like Dance of the Yao People, you know, it's some, you know, but in Chinese, Yao Zu Wu Qu. So like, it's more almost like a modal thing, you know, and you know, the melody.
Make your guitar go, there you go, now we can see it.
Yeah. Sorry, here we go. Right, like that. Right. So I put some more Western harmony to it. So let's try it again. Just play. I don't have enough fingers to do the chords and harmony and the melody at the same time. You don't have to play. Yeah, we'll just edit that out. Yeah, no. You don't have to play like the melody. Harmony, yeah, no, the harmony that would go with that. So it would be like this. You know, something more contemporary.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
And actually, it turned out beautiful. So the melody, certain melodies, you can really mess with them. You know, cut them and splice and do some cool things. And that one worked particularly well. And the thing is, you know, this is a very well-known melody here. So I wanted to do, you know, this, so there'd be a couple tunes on the album that people would easily recognize and then perk their ears up and then be able to grab onto it and then get them kind of more interested in this style. So Beijing is kind of a phenomenon right now, just because, you know, it's not like people here grew up around a blues or, you know, jazz and blues tradition.
Right. I was going to ask you about
Yet where I live here, I mean, I live in basically like, you know, practically walking distance to like 5 venues that have live jazz regularly.
Wow.
And I think that's like, people wouldn't expect that.
Yeah.
So people are going out to hear live music quite a bit here, more than you would think. But, you know, there's one of the comments that I often hear from people is like, you know, they hear something, they like it, but they always say like, oh, it's like, I like it, but I don't understand it. I don't understand what I'm listening to.
You're talking about Chinese nationals are saying that.
right, the local audience, Chinese
Right, yeah.
audience. So yeah, it's just a way of connecting with people, you know, build off something that they are familiar with, you know, and in order to make something jazz, or if we use, you know, to jazz as a verb, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be over a 2-5-1 or that it has to be a jazz standard necessarily, you know.
Right.
We're using music as a vehicle to connect people. And, you know, part of this also was just that I think in this time in the world right now, where in the West, you know, we hear so much about China.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it's true, some of it's not. And out here also, what they hear about the West, we oftentimes forget that what we see in the media is like, you know, the powers that be talking to each other.
Right.
But below everything is like people, and people are not that different wherever you go in the world. So if I can play something on the flip side of this, you know, like a Chinese melody, for example, one of those pieces I sent you was a melody from Xinjiang region. I mean, excuse me, Xinjiang province. Now, we all know what we've been hearing about Xinjiang in the news, and I'm not going to get political here, but, you know, if I can bring some of that to listeners in the West too, it's going to make them think about, oh, that's so beautiful, and it came from Xinjiang, and that was composed and made by a person, and they're going to think more about Xinjiang, about on the personal level,
Right.
and maybe get interested and maybe want to look deeper into, you know, the people there and what's going on. And again, it's all about making connections.
Right.
So,
mothers love their babies.
To
mothers love their babies all over the world.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we're not all that different from, you know, when you get down to the human level. We won't get into the politics of it because that obviously is very different. But people, I you know, I've done business with people all over the world for a long time, and it blew me away when I met. We can talk about that a little bit, but it blew me away when I met people. I went, wow, you know, he's just as crazy as I am. You know, or he digs Corvettes like I do, or whatever it is, you know, or, you know, just
right.
Anyway, but well, listen, you just said you said something really interesting. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Beijing music scene, but you said there's 5 venues within walking distance of you. Are they jazz venues, folk venues, traditional venues? What kind of venues are they?
No, they're jazz venues. I mean, they're small jazz bars.
Wow.
So, I mean, I know when I tell my friends in the US that they find it hard to believe, because one, that anywhere, you know, it's rare to live in a place like that, and two, that it would be in Beijing. I mean, what people, Beijing is kind of a mystery in that sense. I mean, the Blue Note here is like literally a 2-minute walk from Tiananmen Square. That's how close it is. It's almost right next to Tiananmen Square. Now, when I first lived here in Beijing in 2003, if you had told me years later, there would be a Blue Note, you know, which is like, you know, I mean, like when you think of Blue Note, you think of, you know, American jazz, the jazz tradition, you know, a symbol of like freedom. But there'd be a Blue Note, like right next to Tiananmen Square. I tell you, you're crazy.
Oh, yeah, that would probably not have. Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, that's amazing. So there's five jazz venues, like in the same couple of blocks, a few minutes from your house.
Yeah, well, that's just in my neighborhood.
Yeah, I know. Well, let me ask you this question. While we're there, what's the pay like? I mean, you know, like, there's a lot of jazz places, quote unquote jazz places in this country where a guy works at a pizza joint and he's playing. I mean, the guy making pizza is making more money than the guy playing guitar. Now, there's nothing wrong with making pizza. It's a fine tradition and all that. But I mean, you know, these guys are making, you know, $50 a night in tips if they're lucky. You know, some of them are. I mean, you know, some of them are doing better than that. But is the pay scale? I'm not looking for a hard number. I don't want you to expose that. But is the pay scale a livable pay scale if you're a professional musician over there?
Yeah, I think if it's a livable pay scale. I mean, I don't live only off of like the small local venues. I mean, if the other place that I make my money here playing music is just with, you know, private events, corporate events.
Right.
of course, weddings and things like that too. But but corporate events, sometimes it's for an office building having a party. Sometimes it's for the grand opening of some new mall, or sometimes, it's luxury brands,
Right.
having their gala or something. There's, I mean, we all know how big China is and how populous China is, and this
Yeah.
is the capital. So, I mean, there's over 20 million people in
Doing
this
something.
city alone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like when I say there's 5 venues just in my area, I mean, on one hand, it's a lot. On another hand, in a city, that has it's over 20 million, probably closer to 22 million or something like that. It's really not that much. I mean, so even if you have, with a population like that, even if you have like a fraction of a percent of the population participating, in that scene, it's already a lot of people.
So are there the musicians that you play with? I'm jumping all over the place here because this is such a fascinating subject.
Yeah, go
So
for it.
the musicians that you play with, are you playing with other expats from various countries, or are you playing with Chinese? I mean, who are the Chinese musicians, if you will? Are they drawn to this music, and what's going on?
Yeah, and there's great Chinese, musicians too that have, some have been abroad, to the US and Europe and other places to study this music and, learn from really great guys. And there's guys that haven't and are still really good. I mean, in my band, this album, this new project, the band's called Alchemy. I have, 2 of us are from the US. The pianist is from Poland, the drummer is from Italy, and the bass player is from China.
I love it.
So it's very diverse, right?
Yeah, I love it. I guess when you first got there and decided I'm going to play jazz music, in Beijing, was the market already there, or have you been there watching it grow? I mean, I know that you said there's a Blue Note in 2003, blah, 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 but let's just talk about the last 10 years. I mean, is it been there and you just inserted yourself, or were you part of were you part of being in the wave of that culture coming, to Beijing?
Well, I mean, there's been expats coming to Beijing in particular, since the 80s, but I mean, it's
Right.
probably really been growing since the late 90s. And I mean, I know a number of expats who have been here more than 20 years. I met a guy the other day who's been here over 30 years, an American guy. So there's always been a group of expats that brought that with them, and the scene has just slowly been growing this whole time. So by the time when I was here in 2003 and 4, to be honest, at that time, I was so immersed in school, I wasn't really paying a lot of attention to the music scene that closely at that time.
Right.
Beijing's really well known for having a great like indie rock scene too. But when I lived in Shanghai in 2007 and 8, I was playing a lot of jazz music there. Now, Shanghai also has kind of a musical tradition of jazz there since the 30s.
Right.
Now, when I came back here in Beijing in 2012, I found that, there was already a budding jazz scene, and I mean, I think when I came back here, I mean, the first couple of nights, I found a good jam session, and it was like really easy to find, other musicians who were playing, jazz, or just people that were into the music. So it's not at that time, it was even a smaller scene than it is now. So, I mean, if you're here for a few weeks, you're going to pretty much get to know everyone really quick. But
No, I'm sorry. There's a little delay, so I keep talking over you. I'm going to apologize. Go ahead.
No, just to say that it's continuously grown over the years. So, I mean, I think the seeds of it were planted, I would say, as early as the late 90s. But, the last 10 years that I've been here, there's been a lot more of a growing interest in jazz, and a lot of students are going abroad to learn jazz and coming back. So it's not only the expats that are here coming in, to work and bringing it with them, but it's also more and more students who go to, schools like Berkeley or the New School, or You know, I mean, I've met lots of kids here who go to Holland to study, you know, so they're bringing it back on their own too.
Well, that was my next question. What is the educational opportunities to learn jazz right there? I mean, are the universities or schools and all of that offering that as part of their musical curriculum over there yet? Or is it all, or they go abroad and come back like you just alluded to?
There are a few places. You know, I mean, there's a few conservatories that have some of us expats teaching jazz, as well as, you know, a handful of teachers that have been abroad, same thing, study, come back to China and then bring it back and teach, but not everywhere. I'd say, you know, like in Beijing, Shanghai, and even in Chengdu, Sichuan province, there's a presence as well. There's not that many cities, but there's a handful.
So what about the enthusiasm of the audiences? I mean, are they like rabid for the music, or are they lukewarm for the music? Or, I mean, when you, what are the audiences like for you when you're performing?
Generally speaking, the audiences are really well. It's funny though, because sometimes there's cultural differences that are a little bit hard to read. So, you know, like somebody might not realize, like oftentimes if you play here and you play some like ripping solo, and like, you know, a lot of people here are still not used to clapping, you know, like you think like, gosh, what's going on? You know, and it's really, they're just being polite. They don't want to interrupt, like your solo, you know, and you're thinking like, what, like, come on, give me some love, you know, and they're it's not that, you know, they're into it, they're just not clapping because,
Yeah,
you know,
it's a cultural thing. Yeah, they don't know that that's what you do. Well, let's get away from Beijing and China and all of that and talk about you, the guitar player. You play, interestingly enough, you're playing an 18-inch archtop carved guitar. Do you actually?
I have a few guitars that I rotate, but this you know, last time I think I had my Super 400 with me, but actually when I'm around town, to be honest, the guitar I probably play the most these days is my 16-inch Eastman 580, just because it's smaller, easy to carry, throw it on my back. You know, I mean,
on your bicycle?
I'll put it to you this way. If I lived in the US or somewhere where I drove a car to all my gigs,
yeah,
I'd probably have my Super 400 like with me every time. But you know,
let me pause you there for a second, because a lot of people don't, believe it or not, a lot of people don't know what a Super 400 is.
Oh,
and a Super 400 is the big brother to the L5. It's an 18-inch carved archtop guitar with 2 pickups in it, and I guess for some older people, Elvis Presley played one in his comeback.
Well, I can grab mine.
Yeah, grab yours.
Just
yeah, grab it real quick. There it is.
There it is.
There it is. Man, that thing's in incredible condition. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, this is a good one. Yeah.
Now, what year is that? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, it's not that old. This is a 2009.
It's not that old.
You know, what I was saying was, because I live in a metropolis, you know, over 20 million people. So, you know, I ride a bicycle to a lot of my gigs. And, you know, I think we spoke last time, I strap on the front of my bike, my little Henriksen blue.
I know it, I love it.
Put my Eastman on my back. That's how I get to most of my gigs all year round. So, you know, if I need to carry my Super 400, I mean, I'm going to taxi it, which is fine. But yeah, the majority of my gigs, I use the smaller Eastman.
Well, I you know, it's funny when I have a lot of conversations with a lot of guitar players, and a lot of guys say the same thing. They're using thin. Over here, the tendency now is guys are playing thin line guitars. You know, they look and are shaped like a you know, like a traditional archtop, not like a 335, but they're that 1 3/4 inch depth because it's comfort. You know, because that's a lot of guitar to get your arm around. Man, I gotta tell you, I freaking love that.
Yeah, I mean, there's still nothing like a good Super 400.
Oh man. Oh man, play some more. Let us be able to see
Well,
your fingers though. Make sure we can see
yeah,
bring it down a little bit so we can see them. There you go. There you go. We can't
there
see
we
your
go.
face, but we don't care. So what strings are on that? What gauges?
Um, at the moment, domestic flat wound 12s.
Okay.
Sometimes I have 13s on them, but
Yeah.
hands been a little tired lately, so I went back to 12s.
12s are good. We like
They
12s.
all sound good. Yeah, on the record we just made, I used this on a few tunes, and I used my Eastman with a Lawler pickup on a couple tunes that has round wound strings on it, so I could get two different sounds.
Right.
This obviously sounds way traditional. I mean, this thing, you plug it into anything and it sounds like Kenny Burrell. You know, I mean, not really. Nobody
Oh,
sounds like Kenny Burrell,
well,
but
yeah,
you know what I mean.
yeah, I know
Tone
what you
is
mean. Right.
kind of like that classic, yeah, flat wound bop tone. But with the
Yeah.
Eastman, the Lawler pickup, yeah, it's in the round wound pure nickel strings. It's got a nice modern sound.
Very, very, very cool. So play something else for us on that thing. I want people to hear that instrument. Like, is there something quarterly you can inject in
Yeah,
that?
let's see.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know,
A little sloppy, but
that is
this
so
is
evenly,
oh yeah, very even.
it's incredibly even. And you know, that's just the sound. You know, it is just the freaking sound. It really
Yeah,
is.
this is nice too for the swing gigs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just got that chunk.
Super 400. That's like the real deal, man. That is so the real deal. It is so
Yeah, well, you know, the music we make, we want to do, you know, have the best tools for the job that you can find.
So if you're walking to the gig from a few blocks away, do you ever take that with you rather than the Eastman or?
Well, yeah, for this, I actually did have a custom gig bag made that would fit this. And man, it looks so big. It looks, I mean, it's like having a cello on your back, you know, it looks kind of funny. I look like a turtle.
What's moving you along today? What's inspiring you? Who are you listening to? What do you recommend, you know, people listen to kind of get into the music that you're into? You know, what's driving you these days in terms of your own progression?
Well, on one hand, like I said, the album that just came out was a lot of my music and arrangements, so I'm playing a lot of that. And then with there's an American trumpet player here named J. Kyle Gregory. Him and I have a bossa nova band.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's basically he leads it, and we're doing a lot of the classic Joe Beam and also Tocchino Vinicius, you know, bossa nova repertoire, and that's been really fun too. So for that, I actually do have a nylon string guitar with a cutaway and a nice slimmer neck that I use for those gigs. So yeah, I'd say the majority of my gigs are in those two settings right now. And then as far as what I've been listening to, well, today I was listening to I think it's called Kaipi. It's a Kurt Rosenwinkel album. That's a Brazilian collaboration, or
Right. Yeah.
You know, influence compositions. Man, I love that album. So I doubt he's listening, but if he is, like,
Well, I just was talking with Kurt via text and all that. He's been on our cover and we've done a couple of things with him, but we're going to
yeah.
get together here in the next couple of weeks and kind
Well,
of bring people up to
I'm
speed.
looking forward to his new one coming out this month. But that one I've been listening to lately, and you know what I've been listening to that probably make you laugh. I've actually been going back and listening to the MTV Unplugged album of Alice in Chains.
I love it. That's great.
That was the man. That album is so damn good. I love those guys. And you know what? Good music is good music. I don't give a shit if it's jazz or not. Yeah, there's another album that I've been listening to in my rotation lately. That's great. Ari Honig, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, the drummer.
Right.
And the live album, I think it's called Punk Bop. And Jonathan Kreisberg plays guitar on that, and it's just burning. Beautiful playing by everybody. That's another one that's been in my rotation. Love it. We have this new album coming out. The band is called Alchemy. The album is called Cosmos. And again, it's inspired by, compositions of mine that I wrote, while living in China and also traveling other places in the world, like Europe and Hawaii and, all these various places. And, my intention was, being that I live here and we've established I'm an expat here. So I wanted to create something that basically the audience here could kind of grab onto by, taking some of the famous traditional Chinese compositions and kind of rearranging them and tweaking them, melding into something that was, for our contemporary jazz format that they would recognize and kind of pull them in. But then as we started going down this road, I realized, wow, this is actually something that people outside China could probably really find interesting too. Because as far as I know, I can only think of, one other person off the top of my head who's really gone down that road of taking Chinese music and jazz and melding it together. The John Jang of the San Francisco Bay Area comes to mind. Maybe there are others, I'm sure. I just don't know them. But I truly believe that we've come up with something different and unique, and I'm really proud of it. And I know that I had great musicians on hand with me. And I think that when people hear this, I want them to remember that, what they hear about China and other places in the world in the media isn't necessarily what it's really like here down on the ground for the people that live here. And I know, when we talk about, places like Xinjiang, or Hong Kong or Taiwan, well, I live and talk to people from these places every day. So my relationships with them have influenced, the music that I write. And I'm hoping just a little bit of that comes through the music. And, it's like I said earlier, at the end of the day, it's really all comes about, the human relationships and connections. So music is a great way to do that. And I hope people will look out for this music. And then, maybe if you have time, next time you meet somebody who's from a different place, another country or a place different from where you're from, sit down and talk to them.
Amen, brother.
And maybe that'll inspire you to make some new music too.
Amen, brother. Yes, we could go on with that for an hour and a half. Listen, man, I really appreciate you. I really do. I think it's so cool.
The pleasure's all mine. I really appreciate you taking the time.
I think it's so cool what you've done and what you're doing. I see the stages that you play on over there, and for people that don't know, you can see a bunch of your videos on YouTube, and the respect for the music over there. And I mean, to get into your, into what you've done and you're playing and how you're helping to actually, boy, this is a horrible, globalized this music, if you will, to take an American art form, if you will, and really continue to be part of that scene, spreading the word all over the world is really pretty cool in my estimation. You're a great player. You're a really cool guy. You were fun to work with when we worked together back in
Yeah,
the
we
day.
had a good time.
Yeah, we did.
Well,
And all of it's really
I
cool.
think if I can, sorry to interrupt. I just think if I can quote my former employer, or one thing that I thought was really cool when I first met John Jorgensen. I just remember watching him play also at an M show. This was just before I joined his band, and he was talking about the music of Django Reinhardt and how it was a culmination of like American swing and the Roma, gypsy music traditions coming together, and the French chanson and all that thing. And basically the point he was making was that like that's an example of like it's how it can be really cool when like different cultures come together, or different countries work together, so
Absolutely.
I've always remembered that and just thought, yeah, that's a good point. So I've always tried to kind of have that at the head of what I'm trying to do here. Really, we're all just trying to do what we can. We all have different experiences, so it all comes out.
If you get back into jazz and how it got started, African, Irish, all of those things coming together, to create the sound of this music in the first place. It's all part of people from different cultures bringing it in, putting a pot, and see what comes out. And
yeah,
man, this is great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
We're going to say goodbye to Beijing this morning. It's amazing what we can do here, that you're 7 hours away across 12 hours away across the whole world, and we're sitting here having a conversation. I absolutely love it. Bob Baker with Doug Martin, in reporting from Beijing for Jazz Guitar Today. Man, peace, brother.
Thank you, Bob. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, Doug. Bye-bye.
Take care.